So hi and welcome back to the channel. Now in this video I want to share with you some tips that have really helped me with my seascape photography and hopefully will help you take your seascape photography to the next level. If you want to capture atmospheric, dramatic seascape shots, this is definitely the video for you. Some of these tips will be really useful for you. Now I'm back on the beautiful Pembrokeshire coast this morning to a beach that I've been to quite a few times to surf, but I've never filmed on. It's a beautiful setting and hopefully we get a bit of nice light as well and get some nice shots along the way. So the first couple of tips that I'll share with you is about the gear that I use. Now, probably the most important bit of equipment that you can use after your camera is a good solid tripod, because that will provide a nice steady base for you to get those long exposure shots. Now, if you haven't got a good sturdy tripod and you get any movement, that's when you get blurry photos. So when you're photographing shots from probably a quarter of a second, some of my shots are, up to a few minutes, you need something that's really going to hold your camera rigid. Another bit of equipment that's really useful to avoid any camera shake is using a remote shutter. Now this just plugs into the side of your camera and keeps you away from touching it or knocking it. So just got a button there and then you can fire away. For many years I used the 2-second time on the back of the camera, which is fine when you're doing waterfalls and you've got consistent conditions, but when the waves are rolling in and out, it's very hard to time it. So one of these is really useful as well. So when you're using your tripod on sand or any soft kind of surface, make sure it's really dug in to the sand, because again, when the water's rushing around you, things can move quite a lot without you noticing. So always try and get that tripod stuck into the sand as best as possible. Tip 2 is about the graduated ND filter. Now these are really useful. If you're new to photography or seascape photography, this will really help you out because it'll help you get everything in camera. Whereas for many years I used to bracket my shots. Again, with the water moving, I found it quite difficult to get a nice clean edit in software. Now, if you're on the lookout for any filters, I did a review in my last video on these K&F concept filters. They're cheap, but really good quality. So I'll put a link up to it here so you can go and check that out. Tip 3 is about shooting in the water. You want to get your tripod in the water and let the water be wrapping around you, because that'll bring a lot more atmosphere to your final image. And again, as I mentioned at the beginning, make sure your tripod is sturdy, because when the water runs around it, it can get loose again, a bit unsteady, so you want to push that into the ground. And something that you always want to have is an escape plan, as it were, because you might get a rogue wave come, or the tide might be coming in and you could get cut off. I know now high tide's gone about an hour ago, so I've got another 5 or so hours for the tide to go out, so I've got no chance of getting cut off here. The other thing is about your gear, either have it all in your backpack and on your back, or have it further up the beach, because again, if you do have a rogue wave or the tide comes in a bit quicker than you thought, it just protects your equipment. So tip 4 is about shutter speed, and that's something you can have lots of fun with. Now, if you choose a long exposure or a long shutter speed, that will really smooth out the water and make it look like glass. But then on the other hand, if you use a quicker shutter speed, you'll get a lot more movement of the water in your image. I'll put a couple of examples up now.
In this image here of the lifeboat station, I use quite a long shutter speed of 70 seconds, and I like how it's really smoothed out the water, and it definitely brings a more peaceful and relaxing feel to the composition. As we take a look at this next image, you can see that there is a lot more movement in the water, and that's because it was taken at a shutter speed of just 2 seconds. Now, I feel that the 2-second shutter speed that I used helps give a little bit more atmosphere to the foreground. So you can see from both these images that with a change in shutter speed, you can really transform the overall feel of an image.
So tip 5 is all about using lead-in lines. Now that's something we talk about all the time in landscape photography, isn't it? Lead-in lines. Well, in seascape photography, it's just as important. We can use the rocks, which is good, but we can also use the water. Now, if we use a shutter speed of 1 or 2 seconds, that will allow enough movement as the water washes back out to create really nice leading lines in our image. Again, I'll put an example up now.
Now, this is just a quick example of how the water can be used to draw your viewers into an image. Now, again, it's taken at 2 seconds, but as you can see, the crashing waves were rolling right up the beach on this day. So the trick here is to press the shutter button just as the water starts to recede, and then it will give you these nice leading lines.
So tip 6 is all about shooting in manual mode. And the reason you want to shoot in manual mode is that you've got full control of your camera. And another really useful tip that I picked up along the way is to use manual focus. And the reason for that is that when you're using autofocus with the waves moving, sometimes your camera's searching for it and then you end up missing the shot. So that's something worth trying as well. So I'm hoping those tips were quite useful to you. And when you next go out, try and implement them and let me know how you get on in the comments section. Also, you could drop down in the comments any tips that you think are useful that I've not mentioned as well. I'd love to hear what techniques that you use as well. So please like and subscribe the video if you enjoyed watching it, and thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.